Hi everybody, welcome to Scary True Tales, your place for scary stories, ghost stories, paranormal events, unusual, strange things that have happened that you just can't explain, Bigfoot encounters, any encounters with any cryptids. You can just write me at bob.daigle75@aol.com. That's bob.daigle75@aol.com, and I'll be sure to get the story up on the page for you. This encounter happened to a guy in Kentucky, and actually two encounters that happened to him 30 years apart from one another. I was reading about these on the BFRO website in the encounter space under Kentucky, and it happened in Lawrence County, Kentucky. Again, there's two sightings. The second sighting happened right at the Rowan-Lewis County line. He said just across the road from the Daniel Boone National Forest parking area. And the first sighting that happened to him as a kid happened, the nearest town was Louisa, he said, and the second sighting, the nearest town was Moorhead, Kentucky. And the nearest road is, he doesn't remember in the first sighting when he was a kid. The second sighting, the nearest road he was closest to was Cranston Road. And he says that he's an EMT and a former firefighter from the Greenup County, Kentucky area. He said, I had two encounters in my lifetime with what he believes to be Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And he said he's told people that he's had encounters, but he never told anybody of any details, mainly because he said, I know no one would believe me if I did. The second encounter he starts with, he says, I never really saw the creature, but I know that it was a Bigfoot, and I know that it was there. He said, my first encounter was quite the opposite. He saw the creature close up for at least a few minutes, and it was, in short, he says, terrifying. The second encounter happened while he was ginseng hunting in the late summer. He said, I was right on the outskirts of Daniel Boone National Forest at the Rowan-Lewis County line in Kentucky, just a few hundred yards from Cranston Road, he says. He said, I had been in this holler, making my way up to the ridge, looking for roots, ginseng roots, for about an hour or so, he says, when he heard some rustling in the bush, pretty heavy rustling going on. It was probably, he guessed, at about 50 to 75 yards up the hill from where he was. He strained hard to see what made the noise, but he said he thought it was probably a deer, or maybe even an elk or a bear, but he didn't see anything. And as he continued, he was in a zigzag pattern for going towards the top of the ridge. He said he heard the noise again, and he looked again and saw a flash of black, and the brush moved slightly. And then this is when he thought it was a bear, and he just realized I didn't have a firearm with me, and he was pretty worried about that. He said, I decided it would be best to start back down the hill, and as he did, he kept an eye on the area he had seen the movement from, and he said, to his horror, he realized it was following him down the hill all along, making sure to stay hidden and just out of sight. Oh, that gives me the creeps. He said, I could see glimpses of black in the brush and branches moving the whole time he was retreating. And he said, I know that there's a possibility that it was a bear, but what made him so uneasy is the fact that the brush and the branches moving that were being disturbed, he said, they were like 6 feet off the ground. He said, no, he knows that black bears only stand about 3 feet tall. And that's on all fours. And knowing that bears don't move far on two legs, much less several hundred yards, like it had been doing following him down the hill from the ridge. He said, I really believe that what was following me down the hill was a Bigfoot. And oh my gosh, that's creepy. I would have been really scared, especially if I didn't have a firearm on me. He said his first encounter was in Lawrence County, Kentucky. when he was around 8 years old. He said, now, I know that was a long time ago, and he said, but I know what I saw. And he said, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He said, we were staying with some relatives, and he's not sure of the exact location now, but it was in an isolated holler between two hills, with no other houses around. He does remember that. And there were quite a few people there visiting, and it was a little house, so they didn't have quite adequate sleeping rooms. So he said they put sleeping bags on the floor in the rooms, and he said my cousins and I slept on the floor in our sleeping bags beside the parents' bed. And he said he's always been the first person to awake, no matter what type of situation he's in. He's a light sleeper, he said. And he said that morning was no different. He said it was just breaking daylight, and the windows in the bedroom were open because it was very hot there in August in Kentucky. And as I lay there pondering what we would do that day, he said, I saw a figure pass by outside the window next to the bed. And he said his first thought was that somebody had gotten up and had to run outside for whatever reason. But as soon as the thought was finished, the figure was looking in the window by the dresser. He said words can't describe the horror he felt. He said he had never even heard of Bigfoot at that time. Being just a little kid, he said, I was sure that I was looking at King Kong standing right outside the window looking at me. He said, I stayed frozen with fear, knowing that if the beast saw me watching, it would attack me. And that's what I thought of as a kid anyway. He said the next thing I knew, it reached its arm through the window and grabbed a piece of jewelry from off the dresser. The noise that it made caused one of the adults to switch positions in the bed. And he said, and like a shot, it was gone. I told everyone what had happened, and they told me it had been around there for years and not to be afraid, because it had never harmed anyone or anything, and that it was more afraid of him than he was of it. He said, I don't know about that. But he said, what I do know is that I know what I saw. And he said, after this incident, I started learning more and more about Bigfoot and Bigfoot encounters. And he said he was and still is convinced that the creature was real and that it was a Bigfoot. He said he also noticed before the second sighting, he found broken limbs pointing straight down, way too high for deer to reach. And he thought that was odd. And there was no other witnesses around him at the time. And he said the time and conditions in both sightings, the one in 1983 and the one in 2010, he said in 83, it was just getting light outside. He said it was very warm because it was the summer. And in 2010, it was around 6 p.m., very warm and very clear. And the environment was a heavy forest almost directly behind the house, on both sides of the house and across the road. He said heavily forested area, nearly to the top of the ridge, all the way up, and to where he was ginseng hunting. It was very heavily forested all the way up. And the investigator from the BFRO added that he said, I spoke with the witness at length, and he was able to add the following details about his encounter. He said the first encounter was in 1983 in Lawrence County, Kentucky, in a secluded area surrounded by mountains in the area of Louisa. He said he woke up to see the creature looking in the window. He said it was at least 7 feet tall because the window was high off the ground. He saw it from the mid-chest up. He stated that his uncles were 6 feet tall, and they weren't tall enough to even look in the window. And he described the face as ape-like, but more human in appearance. And the hair was described as being very dark and brownish and black. When the creature reached in, he said the arm was massive. The arm and hands were covered with hair, except for the fingers. He said he was very frightened but was reassured by the adults that what he had seen was harmless. And in his second encounter that occurred at the Rowan-Lewis County line when he was ginseng hunting there, an avid outdoorsman and a hunter himself, he said he was well aware of the possibility that what he saw could have been a bear, but based on his experience, it seemed that whatever was stalking him was following him more out of curiosity than in any type of predatory situation. So he knew if it was a predatory type situation, it would have probably gone a little differently than it had. That's an amazing 2 encounters there. I don't know, the one when he was a kid, I would have been scared to death. I probably would have screamed for my parents immediately when I saw, very first, when I saw him looking at me. I wouldn't have given him time to even reach in the window. That would have freaked me out. Like I said, if you have any stories, anything you would like to share, encounters, paranormal, just any kind of spooky local legends, I love those. Email me at bob.daigle75@aol.com. It's bob.daigle75@aol.com. And we'll be sure to get your story up on the channel. And if you'd rather have a phone interview, that'll even work too. Whatever you like. Let's just get these stories out there so people can enjoy them, and I'm having a blast doing it myself. I'm just going to be honest with you, this is the most fun I've had in a long time. So please come back to Scary True Tales, and we'll be sure to leave a light on for you. Don't be scared.